Hey, team players, and welcome back to Local Football Flavor. Today, we're going to be diving into that really important chicken or the egg question. What is more important, having an elite playoff team that's going to dominate 15, 16, and 17? Obviously, it's the only way to win that $2 million is to win 17. Or do you need to focus on just getting there and being happy that, at least I get something in return by winning my regular season? That is the dive down of this episode. We're going to be doing a live draft, making people a ton of money, and welcome to Local Football Flavor. So, Bob, coming out of there, you just saw a little glitch on my side where I can't click a button fast enough, a little dead air, but nonetheless, what our whole concept here is, you obviously need to build a team to get out of your bracket. That's a given. But if you look at correlations, particularly focusing upon 15, 16, and 17, it's not saying that we're precluding talent or that we're trying to say you should only draft people who have stud matchups in week 17 and take other people off your boards. We're still saying you take the best players for your build, but if you're coming down to a situation where it's like, well, should I take Jennings or should I take like Metcalf? And then going through the divide there of figuring out the best spot. Welcome, Jesse. Glad to have you here at the party. And as always, guys, all team players, send out your questions, your comments, both for the live draft and stuff that you want to see fill out. If you haven't been a team player yet, hit that like and subscribe button. We're here for you. So, Bob, why don't you introduce some of the teams that you're liking in the playoffs? Basically, kind of going through what this balance is like.
Basically, kind of what we're doing. I printed off the whole schedule, and I just, we're focusing and taking a look at weeks 15, 16, 17, because as you said, obviously you want to build a team that's going to get you out of the regular season. And for the most part, that's 14 weeks of, okay, it's a grind, right? 15, 16, 17 is where you're making your money. So, I'm never happy with just making my money back. I always want to try to go to the next level. So this is building off that idea of week 17 correlation and focusing on, what I want to do to win the championship. But I'm also trying to focus on and see, well, if I take a look at week 15, week 16, week 17, and if I see where some correlations are between teams that kind of play similar teams in this schedule, at least, there's kind of an advantage that I can get in no uncertain terms in certain matchups, right? And strictly speaking, I want to focus on matchups that I think are going to be either super competitive or extremely one-sided for different concepts, right? We've been talking over the last couple of weeks about how you can build a game script and think about that game script and think about how it's going to play out. Teams are going to look and play very differently week 15, 16, 17 than they're going to play week 1 and week 2. We just know that out the gate. So we kind of have to make a couple of educated guesses as to what's going to happen here. Now, I just kind of want to point out something. As we go through this, you're going to hear me talking about some correlations that I think are ones that I want to take advantage of. But again, they're not the only ones. And it is important that you're going to be able to pivot as we go forward. So just as an example, I want to take the New York Jets, okay, as my first example. The New York Jets, weeks 15, 16, 17, played Jacksonville, New Orleans, and New England. Now,
that looks spicy.
Week 15 and 16 are both going to be in the South. So that's going to be, you are not looking at weather for that. Week 17, it's going to be in New England, could be a real shitty weather environment. But again, it's a good enough matchup for the Jets. Now, what we're saying is, okay, well, that matchup week 17 isn't stellar. But again, week 15 and 16, the Jets are probably going to be a decently high-scoring team for both those weeks, knowing what we know about Jacksonville and knowing what we know about New Orleans. Again, all of those things could change. However, is it smart to build the Jets because that matchup week 17 might be a little bit of a slog? Okay, well, if you think that, what I'm saying here is that, okay, maybe I build the Jets here for their week 15, 16 matchups, but hey, I look and I see Jacksonville plays them week 15. So let's see what Jacksonville's matchup is week 7. Well, Jacksonville, week 17, is at Indianapolis, which is another pretty
Oh,
good
yeah,
matchup.
that's a good one.
So I'm willing, even though Jacksonville might have a hard time maybe against Denver in week 16, I'm probably going to have some nice correlation, or I could build a nice team if I include players from Indy and the Jets. Taking as another example here, let's take a look at Seattle. Seattle plays Indy, the Rams, and Carolina. So we look at it and say Carolina could be an incredible matchup week 17. I want to buy into some correlation there. Walker, Jackson Smith, and maybe Tet. Maybe I want to build Darnold and Tet and maybe Chuba Hubbard, something of that nature. But then you look and you say, well, wait a minute. The Rams are on this schedule for Seattle. That's some good correlation for week 16. And let me take a look. Oh, wait, the Rams play Atlanta week 17 as well. Well, Atlanta has correlation to Carolina for 2 games during the season, plus the correlation for Seattle. So maybe you want to build a couple of teams that have Atlanta, Seattle, and Carolina players, plus the Rams. There's a lot of different ways to configure this. Now, there are certain matchups that maybe you want to stay away from because you don't believe in the participants. For example, Green Bay's schedule goes Denver, Chicago, and Baltimore. At Denver, at Chicago, and at home against Baltimore during the doldrums of what could potentially be a rough weather. I'm probably going
to passing team. That's not great.
I'm probably going to be staying away from much of Green Bay, but maybe not Baltimore, right? Maybe Baltimore I'm going to hit up a little bit more because they play Cincinnati week 15 at Cincinnati, and maybe that's going to be a very competitive environment. And oh, wait, who does Cincinnati play week 17? Arizona. Who does Cincinnati play week 16? Miami. And they play at Miami and at home against Arizona. So maybe you want to take advantage of some of the more nuances of that schedule and focusing where are the potential correlations in teams, as well as the correlations to the environments, as well as the correlations that you have to weather. Because while we can't say for certain who's going to be healthy by the end of the year.
If I heard you right on that last one, Cincy, Baltimore, Miami are all correlated?
So, yeah. So, again, Miami has correlation. So, Cincy has correlation to Baltimore in week 15, Miami in week 16, and Miami in week 17 will have correlation to, let me see where Miami's at here. We'll have correlation to Tampa. So, if you want to build Miami-Tampa, which I've done before, you could totally start adding in.
And guys, the reason that these correlations matter so much is because essentially what you're trying to do is nail the highest scoring teams, obviously. And when you're in the highest scoring games and you have them all kind of confluencing, part of what your projection of calling this out here is Miami's going to have a bad defense, but they're going to have to play shootouts to outscore you. Cool. That's awesome. Everyone knows that's going to happen. Miami's defense is walking away. Cincinnati isn't even trying to play defense. Their best defensive player, they're not talking about re-signing, and their first-round draft pick, who's raw as hell, they will not give them the money because he might get hurt during minicamp. How cheap are you, Bengals?
Precisely. But I also want to point out, too,
they're not playing defense.
Right? Like a team like New Orleans. New Orleans scheduled down the stretch, 15, 16, 17, is Carolina, Jets, Tennessee. So from the perspective of New Orleans, you could capture some value with New Orleans and Tyler Shook or Alvin Kamara or something of that nature. But also you're going to get some value from that other side with either New Orleans could be a bring back for you and you put in Shaheed and Shook, or you just put Shaheed in and then you have Carolina, Jets, Tennessee. Tennessee has a rough go. San Francisco and KC are their week 15 and 16 game, but that matchup week 17 is extremely juicy against New Orleans. So if you can build in some of those Jets, if you could build in some of the Rams, if you could build in some of Atlanta and start thinking of correlations in a different way, you are attacking it in a way that other people who are drafting are not. Other people are drafting with a strict correlated mindset. I'm going to attack week 17 and I want to win week 17. And that's true. You do want to week 17. But along with that, if you build a lineup that has week 17 in mind and also consider week 15, 16 with some other correlated matchups, like you're looking at it and I'm seeing, okay, I can capture Tampa. And if Tampa ends up being great, Tampa's got Atlanta, Carolina, and Miami on that schedule. Well, I can build a nice little correlated stack at the beginning of my draft with Bucky Irving and Achan. And I don't even have to worry about running back for quite a little bit. And I can start attacking Tet because Tet has a good matchup in week 17 as well.
So you want Carolina in that stack as well. All right.
It just depends on what you are, where you're at positioned in the draft. And again, you can switch on a dime too, because look, if you look at Philly, for example, Philly's going to be most likely a strong team. Their week 15, week 16 matchup are most likely going to be them just beating the brakes off of Vegas, and in a tight matchup probably with Washington. Week 17, they play Buffalo at Buffalo. That probably dictates that Saquon Barkley could be an amazing pick week 17, and we might want to get in a little bit more Kincaid if you're taking Barkley. A good stack to go along with that would be a Kincaid on the opposite side. So thinking about those bringbacks as well in these game environments, because, weather can change on a dime. And if I'm only correlating week 17 Buffalo Philly and that game is a snowstorm, I could be wrecked. So what I'm saying is you want to keep in mind all of these different correlations in week 15, in week 17, in week 16. The research dictates week 17 is what you want to win, but you got to get there. You got to get there.
And one of the great things that Bob just laid out for you is yes, it pigeonholes you, but by looking at, he roughly gave a third, maybe a quarter of the league that has some really good matchups from the way we see it right now. So just by focusing on this list and letting the correlations happen, Jets, Jacksonville, Seattle, Rams, Atlanta, Carolina, Bengals, Miami, Baltimore, and Tampa. Just by focusing on that list, you can build an incredibly strong lineup, and that's what we're about to do. So obviously, we still got to use draft knowledge, draft skills, to make the best team to get out of the first 14, but you're going to be in a position of strength on the home stretch.
I also just want to point this one out too, Joe, is that there's a nice, interesting dynamic that can also be built with these teams. So Houston, Arizona, Atlanta, Cincy, all of that has a bit of correlation as well. So keeping that in mind, we're drafting at pick number 8.
You know what, Bob? I think that's the one I want to do because first off, I love the Houston-Cincinnati combo. Cincinnati ain't going to play defense at all. Arizona doesn't even try. Actually, I said that backwards. Arizona tries. They're just really bad at it. Cincinnati ain't
Arizona,
trying.
You get Arizona on Houston's schedule. You get Arizona on Cincy's schedule and on Atlanta's schedule. So
I like that. So, Bob, based on an ideal world, if I can get Collins in this first pick, which I think is pretty doable. I don't think he's going to come back to 17.
Collins and Ladd or Collins and Drake London, I think is a good combination at pick 8, where we're sitting.
Well, you haven't said the Chargers at all. So London would probably be the second one there.
Well, the Chargers play Houston week 17. So there's that. That's where that piece of corration is.
Yeah, but they weren't in any other happy matchups for you.
No, it's Kansas City and Dallas. Kansas City and Dallas, which could be rough.
Yeah. So that being
Dallas
said,
game, maybe not so much.
Let's focus on looking at this the way in which we're talking about here, trying to get these combinations. You're never going to see me advocate for Drake London, but this is part of what this is going to be. If we can build a correlation, Drake London, completely reasonable and acceptable selection there at 17. Taking Collins here, one of the guys who I think is personally getting slept on like crazy. And then you do.
And what I like about this, Joe, is that
although I am a running back core, Bob, I might push for H-Chain. H-Chain was on your list too.
No, Joe, this is what I'm saying. It opens the door to some other escape routes if your main stacks close up. So, for example, since he plays Miami in week 16, Miami then goes to Tampa in week 17. Well, Houston played Arizona. Like there's all these potential stacks, and if you take Atlanta, Atlanta builds in your Tampa Bay, and you can also get a little bit of that Tampa Bay action as well. There's
Yeah,
a
the
lot
bottom
of
line is Atlanta has a very good 2 of the 3 last weeks, and like I said, I think that, like I said,
Tampa,
you're not going
Arizona,
to get
and
a whole lot
the
of
Rams.
London in my
Yeah,
life, but it's where we're going to have to focus on, Bob, looking
love
at this
Nico.
set of rosters. I love Collins too, Jesse. Is going to be how we get running backs on our team between Atlanta, Arizona, Cincinnati, and Houston. We're going to have to take
Arizona's James
Arizona's
Conner.
backs.
We get Connor and Benson. Connor
Yeah.
and Benson, because we don't know if Connor's going to make it a full
Like an
season.
Algier play makes a whole lot of sense.
Algier, bring back. Yeah. And again, we don't have to mega stack. We can just do some little pockets and some bringbacks. Little pockets.
Well, let me put it this way: if Derrick Henry's still on the board here, because Baltimore had a lot really good end one too, I would like to do Henry.
Baltimore had Cincy, New England, and Green Bay. Not a huge fan of that. Big Green Bay.
I am for running the ball.
Could be awesome.
The Green Bay doesn't stop the run. Green Bay was like 24th against the run last year.
Yeah, if you build out that'd be fine. But again, Derrick Henry.
We're not going to get it though. So this is going to be London.
London, I think London is a great pick in this spot. London opens the door for us to start some Arizona in the next round. So we could take Marvin Harrison Jr. round 3 here, a guy we don't normally take, but he's also on Cincinnati's schedule, which opens up a potentially later a Gesicki. Or if we wanted to put Chase Brown on the team, that's fine as well. Not a guy that we're a huge fan of.
Bob, you never get me to accept Chase Brown.
But again, I'm saying when we talk about game environments, there's the potential for these things to play out. Again, if McBride,
can I just walk that through the Chase Brown hang?
It's not magic.
Here's my problem with Chase Brown. I understand it might be the best running back situation in the league because of what they do, how much they throw the ball to their backs. My fundamental problem with Chase Brown is this. I know he's not an actual talented football player. He is just in the best situation in the world. And he is so prime to lose his job because he's not a talented football player. I can't use a 3rd round pick with that fact. Most people are oblivious to it. But I want Brooks from the end of the draft on this team because I think he's going to take the job. And I get a guy in the 17th round or later who's going to be a league winner. Like I that's my problem with Cincinnati's running game. And I just like that. Want to put on the record, I was just like that with Garrett Wilson last year, pretty much right on him. So
in redraft magic, how I would go through this if you take a look at Chicago's schedule. There's a lot of game environments that are probably going to lead to a lot of passing attempts this season for Chicago. So I do place him as number 1 out of those guys in redraft for me, not best ball, redraft. And then I probably, if I'm looking at the Jets, I see that, Wilson could probably benefit from the lack of targets in that offense. But I do have a question about how Justin Fields will get him the ball. But again, Arizona's schedule is a little bit interesting to me. So I would probably do it DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson. My opinion about that is different in best ball, but in redraft, I think that DJ Moore has a little bit more upside for me in an offense that's probably going to pass it a lot. And then Marv and then Wilson. I think Wilson's going to be a huge target hog. I just don't know how many targets are going to be distributed. If you think that he's going to get 120 targets, then Wilson absolutely should be tops of that list. But if his targets go down any, that could be a little bit of a struggle. All right, Joe. So
for me, you guys just talked about him. Arizona's on our list. To me, this is Harrison.
Yeah. So that gives us a week 15 matchup in Collins and Marv. Yeah. And then the Atlanta gives us a week 16 matchup with Atlanta. So then if we wanted to tackle the week 17, maybe we have in the 4th round here, if Kyron's still there, Kyron would be a good one to take because he gets that correlation.
Well, yeah, so just so you guys know behind the scenes, I was looking at either Marv or Adams. Harrison goes there, Kyron goes there. So we take Harrison here. And Bob, quite frankly, if Mixon's still sitting there in the 4th round at 4-5, I think I'd go Mixon. Because I get a little running back scared.
Also, Joe, week 17 correlation. Chargers at Houston. We could go Omarion.
I'd rather go Mixon.
By week 15, 16, 17, it's all the chinks of Najee versus Omarion are going to have worked itself out. So I wouldn't be scared of Omarion. You believed in him pre-draft. I wouldn't be scared at all of Omarion.
I get that, but the reason I'm leaning Mixon is I don't think that the rookie can take Mixon. So, I didn't love the rookie as much there.
That's fine.
In terms of likelihood of getting 70% of the carries, I'm more confident Mixon will do it than Omarion Hampton, even by the end of the year.
Okay. I'm just
great carries. I just think that you'll get more of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair to come to that assessment as well. Also,
and then if I get Chuba Hubbard on the comeback, I would take that as a win. A very different build for how we normally do this, by the way.
Chuba actually would open up Seattle and Tampa. Tampa's already opened up to us, Joe. So if you wanted to go like Chris Godwin later, Tampa Bay's opened up by Atlanta. Just so you know.
See, all right, let's talk Godwin for a hot minute here too. I think that the signing of
that question, Magic,
should tell you that Godwin ain't good this year. I know they paid him. I know all that. But you don't draft Mbuke if Godwin's good, because they clearly love McMillan. So
yeah, and the reason I
look at the actions people do. It's scary to me.
The reason I like Mixon there also, now in general, just in terms of schedule, when we think about schedule, Arizona and Vegas are the week 15, 16 matchup. Those should be wins. And in matches where they're up or when their score is like pretty competitive, Mixon got a good look at things last year. So if Mixon is still playing at the back half of the season, that looks nice. The Chargers are a run first kind of mentality team. So week 17 taking Mixon could be really nice. If we can
can I ask you a side question here with this theory? Because we're going so deep.
Let me answer. Do we want to
answer
Mr. Magic's question first, Joe. Let me answer Mr. Magic's question first. So in the playoffs here, if we're looking at week 15, 16, 17, Chicago's sitting there with Cleveland, Green Bay, and San Francisco. So I like that for the passing game. If we're looking at Arizona's, it's Houston, Atlanta, and Cincinnati. You might have a hard time with Houston, but Atlanta and Cincinnati, you should have an easier time with. And the Jets, they draw Jacksonville and New Orleans, which is going to be really nice for the playoffs to start with. But then New England in New England. Now, I don't think it's going to be super bad of a matchup, but I do think that weather will play a role. So I do like the Jets when we look at Jacksonville versus New Orleans in the South, in a dome, and in the South during what should be not wet weather, not too wet weather. I like that. And that's why the reasons why I think Breece Hall has pushed up my boards a lot too. It's because Jacksonville has a terrible run defense. New Orleans has a terrible run defense, and New England is just so. So, I think
Bob, give me Denver's run defense for the end of the year. What will they be playing? Because I'm looking at Harvey here.
Denver will be playing Green Bay, Jacksonville, and Kansas City. I don't like the Kansas City matchup. And that's
I don't
like
the Kansas City one, but I love the other two for
running
the ball.
That's why I'm staying away from him for the most part there.
Well, see, that's the reason for me to want him. Because he'll get me two there, and then we just need to finish week 17 hard. We need a week 17 running back, but I like the idea of going Harvey Connor here. Unless we get a receiver that we really love. Although we said Miami's good. I give Waddle here or Waddle in the next one.
You could probably get Waddle on the next one.
So Bob, between Harvey, Connor, who do you want?
Waddle. You make the choice on that one. That's fine. You can make.
We'll stick with the Arizona stack.
Yeah. And so just for you guys out there that are asking, well, why would you take Connor and Harrison? So, these two guys are not guys that we super like. Week 15, it gives us a little bit of correlate. It gives us the correlation to Houston. We have the week 15 correlation with Houston. Then we have an incredible matchup versus Cincinnati, which should be a high scoring matchup. If they can move the ball downfield, Connor will get a little bit more touches in the red zone. We like that. We don't have any correlation to Cincinnati. Do we necessarily need some? Not really. But that environment, if we want to get Gesicki on the when we think about tight ends, we get a little bit of usage out of that side. We look at Houston. We haven't built in the Chargers yet, but maybe instead of building C.J. Stroud, Joe, we build Trey Harris and Justin Herbert to give us a little bit of that week 17 with Houston. You see where I'm going with this?
I see where
possibilities
I think
are
Stroud's
endless.
one of the most underrated guys, though.
And the possibilities are endless. This also opens the door to Kyler. If we wanted to take Kyler Murray and then take Stroud or Herbert.
We are taking Kyler on the next turn, not this one. So, Bob, this pick's going to come down to Ridley, Godwin, Adunze, Olave. Not a lot of them on that stack list.
I like Godwin because Godwin gets us Atlanta. It gives us Atlanta there in week 15. But also it opens the door to potentially Miami if we want to take Jonnu Smith as well.
And, I stated all the fear about Godwin, but he's also our number 4 receiver. If I'm wrong and he hits like last year, win.
And I'm also not afraid if I'm tackling
for a number 4 receiver, he's a great lottery pick.
If I'm tackling Tampa Bay, I'm building out players from Atlanta, Carolina, and Miami. So knowing that we can take Jonnu as our tight end as well, take a late Gesicki if we wanted to. This also opens the door for Kyle Pitts with our Drake London. That matches up pretty well. I'm a big fan of that. It opens up the door to Michael Penix as well. So again, we're talking about week 15, 16, 17 correlations to game environments. We're talking about stacks that you could potentially build and not going wholly all in on week 17, but building out week 15, 16, and 17 and getting good matchups throughout that we think are going to pop, right? You look at the competitiveness versus the one-sidedness, it can play. Do I think Tyreek's ADP is too high? I do. I am willing to take a lot of chances on Tyreek right now, especially if at the 312. Tyreek is a tremendous value at the 312, I think. Where he was going before this was typically back end second, top of the third. I think back end third is probably where Tyreek belongs, to be honest with you. And we've talked a lot about, Tyreek and the belief system there. People don't think that he's going to be there all year, but let's face it. The Steelers, Cincinnati, and Tampa, 2 of those games in Miami to end the year is incredibly good. When we think about how Steelers defense was just kind of like subtly not that great last year. When we think about how Cincinnati was obviously bad and Tampa Bay was good. But Tampa Bay, that's going to be a competitive environment. So a tackling Hill, if you get them anything lower in the third round, I think is great. Anything higher than the third round, I'm really not willing to put too much value in that. And I'm willing to push a little bit more to Waddle and Jonnu, to be honest with you.
So, Bob, for this upcoming pick here, to cut you off, you dive right back into it. It's either Olave or Murray.
I don't want Olave. The correlation.
Dude, I don't know. That Saints ended schedule. They're going to be thrown for their lives.
Yeah, but the news has been saying he might be a Steeler, and I don't know which way I want to go on that right now.
So you want to go with Murray then?
I'd like to go Kyler here. And then I'm done with Arizona. I'm not taking any more Arizona players.
You were done with Arizona. Well, no, we're going to put Trey Benson on this because I do think that for this type of build, it is good to self-handcuff.
Yeah, so too many mouths to feed for Tampa. Yeah, in a redraft league, I'm probably pushing myself a little bit outside of Tampa because, you can say that Baker Mayfield's going to regress from where he was at. But in best ball, I'm still all in on Tampa. I'm willing to throw a couple of shots at Jalen McMillan where his draft value. I mean, he's tanked. I'm willing to throw more shots at McMillan than I am at Egbuka, to be honest with you. because McMillan will probably play a different role than Igbokwe in this scenario. So, I'm willing to push that in a different direction. I think Igbokwe in the 8th round.
Here's another fact about Igbokwe. Sure, he's talented, but he's never been above the number 3 on a roster.
Joe,
granted,
here,
I know he's at Ohio State, the wide receiver factory of America.
Joe, right here, I'd like to go Jonnu. I'd like to go Jonnu here. I think his value is fine.
Fields here, dude.
Justin Fields doesn't fit on this team.
I want to go Justin Fields. You mentioned the Jets a couple times.
Yeah, but there's I don't want to push Justin Fields with Kyler like this. Okay, we have a lot of room open on the other quarterbacks that we need to go Jonnu.
Jonnu, it is.
Okay. I love.
And by the way, if you guys haven't noticed, Bob wins all tiebreakers in this episode.
But Joe, here's the thing: I love Justin Fields, but we have not built out correlation to him with Jacksonville, New Orleans, or New England. Okay, so
that's true. That's true. Yeah, keep it correlated. That's right.
I don't want to waste our 8th round pick there to double up on the QB, especially when we have Herbert open to us, Stroud is open to us right now. Okay.
And you know what else I love about this roster, Bob? 8 picks in, all starting spots are filled. Obviously not a necessity, but I always love those teams. I always think they look a little bit sharper.
Yeah, and when we think about building out, like a guy like Quinton Judkins, right? So we look at Cleveland's schedule. Buffalo and Steelers, or Chicago Buffalo Steelers, that Steelers game could probably be a big slog. So having the running backs in that might not be terrible. It might not be a terrible play to go Judkins. And if you don't go Judkins and you built out Caleb Johnson, going Dylan Sampson's probably not a bad call either. It's gross to build out some Cleveland guys, but again, there are many doors that are open to you if you view it from this angle, and then you know how to pivot off of certain players. Now we're not panicked, right? We're not panicked. We're not taking fly by night. We're going in it and tackling with a plan here.
Now so speaking
Tampa,
of the plan, I would like this next pick to be Darnell Mooney.
Darnell Mooney, absolutely. If we're going, and again, if we don't take Darnell, it opens up.
Because Atlanta is in our stack left and right.
Atlanta's in our stack. And again, Atlanta, we don't have the correlation to the Rams on the other side, but that's fine. But we have a week 16 correlation and a week 15 correlation to Atlanta. So
yeah, and again, this is the way Bob built this is correlations that are in week 15, 16, and 17. You're not going to hit a home run in all of them, but if you can hit a home run in 2 out of the 3, well, now you're cooking with gas because you're going to be there.
Again, looking for correlated matchups where I can get 2 out of those 3 matchups to be with the same group of teams in week 15, 16, 17, I think is ideal when we think about, well, what's going to happen in these games, right?
So this turn, guys, ideal world is Mooney and then Stroud.
So if I'm being honest,
now we have 2 stacks with the quarterback and 2 skilled players for when they play each other.
I actually think like Trey Harris would probably be better because it gives us that Chargers correlation.
I don't think Trey Harris is going to be a good player. The more and more I went back to Harris in this situation, I don't think he's going to get on the field very much. And I know they don't throw the ball enough. So I'm really cooling on Trey Harris. I wasn't big on a pre-draft. There was a hot minute there when I thought he could beat out QJ, but I don't think
I'll get to this, Magic. Do you believe in Naj? Because if Naj falls to the 10th, that might be a good pick in the 10th.
I do. I'm good with Naj.
If he's there in the 10th, I think that would be a good pick.
All right. I think I should take him here and then roll the dice on Mooney.
Okay. Because I think we can. I think we don't need. I don't think Mooney is essential. He's a nice piece for sure because we talked about how we really like Darnell Mooney this year. But again, is RJ Harvey going to be?
We just take Stroud. It's not the end of the world.
Is RJ Harvey going to be a good sleeper pick in redraft? I don't think he's a sleeper. Okay, that's the whole problem with RJ Harvey. I think RJ Harvey is going way too high. We know that he has a very high chance to be successful. But again, you're looking at from pre-draft to draft till now, RJ Harvey has climbed almost 13 rounds. And so a guy that has climbed 13 rounds for me is no longer a sleeper, especially in redrafts where running backs tend to go a little bit higher in home redraft leagues, depending on format. I could see people taking RJ Harvey in redraft leagues as high as the 3rd round. Okay. And I'm not shitting you on that. Like, I know guys in my home
No, that's
league
legit.
that will absolutely take RJ Harvey in the 3rd round. Okay. So just keep your head on a swivel for that. And I think it's really important to kind of think about that. Joe, I'm not nervous yet because guess what? We can still build out Matt Stafford. He's in the stack with Atlanta. We don't have any other players from the Rams, but at Rams week 17.
See, I don't want an uncorrelated Stafford. So to me, this pick is, I think the one we add now is Penix, quite frankly. I think we just go Mooney
I'm
here.
okay with Penix. With Penix. He gets us that week 17 or week 15, week 16 for sure. And then we get the stack in week 17. I like that. I don't know if we have to push Penix
so this
right
pick
now.
would be Mooney and then Penix on the next come around.
Okay. Do you want to build Pitts into this, knowing we have Jonnu as well?
I think we're going to
over-invested a little bit.
It's is falling like a brick.
Jesse, between Mixon and KW, who would I rather draft? Personally, in best ball, I'm taking a whole lot of K9. I'm also taking a smattering of Mixon. In this draft, we took Mixon, but I'm taking K9 for a couple of reasons. They went in and they said, we ran the ball so terribly last year that we have rebuilt and added pieces to the offensive line. We went out and went with a different OC who's going to be a little bit more balanced or a little bit more run heavy. Plus, Sam Darnold passes the ball a decent clip to the running backs. Okay. So I am all in on KW because when we think about where K9 is versus Mixon is a volume oriented back. If K9 stays healthy, he doesn't have to get an incredible amount of volume to be relevant in a game. Okay. He's very explosive. He doesn't have to be, just depending on the situation he's in. I'm all in on K9, particularly. I would rather have K9 over RJ Harvey, if I'm being quite honest with you, based upon what I see from what we see from, and here's the other thing. Darnold's not going to steal dink and dunk touchdowns once you get into the red zone. Bo Nix can't. Bo Nix absolutely will. And they have a better tight end in Evan Ingram as well. So I'm not sold on RJ Harvey's total touchdown production. He could be a good burner for yards, but again, I'm not sold on total production there. Jason, it's good to see you, man. We can't wait. We've been rolling all through the offseason. So we are now just getting
subscribe, be with us, watch some more tape.
Sure, Jason. In redraft, will you say Fields would be the best sleeper quarterback to draft? I see Fields and Murray going around 8 and 10. Absolutely. If I'm looking at it, Jason, and I'm going to read you the schedule for the Jets, and it's a good schedule for Fields. It's Steelers, Buffalo, Tampa, or Steelers, Buffalo at home, Tampa, Miami away, Dallas, Denver at home, Carolina at home, Cincinnati away, bye week, Cleveland, away at New England, away at Baltimore, home at Atlanta, home in Miami, Jacksonville, New Orleans, New England. Those are all matchups that if he makes it a whole season, he is absolutely going to be one of the quarterbacks that is going to be like, oh, wait, I should have waited to the 9th or 10th round to take a quarterback, because he could potentially provide you with the same value of a guy like Bo Nix, and you're taking him 2 to 3 rounds later most of the time. Typically speaking, quarterbacks drop in redraft leagues, so you're not going to, unless your name is Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, or Lamar, you're probably not going to get drafted in the top 3 rounds of a redraft league. Again, it could change.
So, Bob, I got to tell you, this is an ugly pick. That Penix is the one we're going to take if we can't come up with someone better.
I'm okay with Penix there. It prevents Team 10 from screwing us out of it. And honestly,
so we do need to figure out this next pick. Then you can jump back into your answer.
Honestly, Joe, we're in the 11th round right now.
Next pick here.
We're in the 11th round right now. I think this is prime Jack Beck. Jack Beck gets us a Las Vegas correlation in week 16 to Houston.
Okay. I'm good with that. Beck is a guy, unlike Trey Harris, Beck has grown on me. It's not that hard to get on the field for every 2 receiver set with the Vegas. It's just not.
Yeah, and so I do want you to make sure, seeing all these tight ends go, I do want you to make sure you throw in a Gesicki A Tua with Jonnu wouldn't have been bad
Well,
either
here,
with this.
dude,
But
Njoku's
yeah.
been slipping for like 3 rounds. I know there's no correlation to him, but he's
Yeah, I'm
talented. And that
okay.
team's not to be losing a lot.
Yeah, if we get him, I'm okay with that. I also like a Gesicki a little bit later. I don't think Njoku's a necessity right now, but I do like
So
the
then
value.
it'll be back, and if Njoku keeps sliding. All Cleveland
Yeah.
guys, for the record, have been sliding like crazy.
And honestly, getting Beck here will it gives us a nice week 17 matchup against the Giants, potentially a tough matchup against Houston. But again, they're going to have to throw the ball a decent amount against Houston. So I'm okay with Beck there. It gives us our 6th wide receiver, a nicely structured team here. We haven't been looking or paying attention to bye weeks. Again,
No, we
whatever.
haven't.
Well, whatever.
Here's the thing: with so many of these guys on the same teams,
it's not a necessity.
We might get a little bye week screwed here. So we do need to start looking at the backs, though.
Our backs are fine.
This is probably Benson and Algier on the turns here.
Yeah, I'd push. I think Benson goes a little bit later than Algier, I want to say.
No, well, right now, Benson is 7 picks higher.
Okay. So holding out on Algier isn't bad.
Pretty much at where our picks will be.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with that. We haven't gotten any Carolina love or not a lot of Miami, but that's okay. Taking a couple things here and there from Miami is not bad. We have no Cincinnati yet.
We can always throw in Kine at the end.
That's
not a big deal.
I like a Kine. Throw a Kine in there. You can queue up Yoshivas too somewhere. Yoshivas, I think, would be a good.
I'd rather do Brooks.
No, not right now.
Yoshivas too. Yeah, we can do the iOS.
Not right now. Yoshivas and Brooks, I think, are good cues towards the end there.
Oh, no, I'm just queuing these guys. Yeah.
All right. Jason, thoughts on Kamara? Kamara is one of those guys that I'm willing to take in best ball. If his value drops far enough in redraft, I'm absolutely, if I can get him in the 6th round, 7th round in home leagues, I'm okay doing that. Anything higher than round 4, I'm not. If he's slated to go, if his ADP climbs at all and he's heading in like the 4th, 5th round, I'm probably out on him in the 4th. I've seen him go as high as the 4th. That's why I'm saying it. I'm out on him in the 4th. As you guys know, I am in on him in the 6th. Alvin Kamara is actually one of my favorite running backs of the last several years.
Be real. He's one of your favorite plays. Like
not of all time. Not of all time. Barry and LaDainian are like my boys, plus Darren Sproles. But you look at it and you say, okay.
Darren Sproles didn't play with LaDainian Tomlinson, you would never have liked him.
No, dude. I watched him at Kansas State, dude. He ripped. He was so good. So absolutely good.
And guys, a local football flavor, you're always apt to get a little Darren Sproles love.
But I do think that with them drafting Neal a little bit later and them still having Kendra and then their quarterback situation, what it is with Tyler Shook, I think you can't be all in on Kamara higher than the 6th round. Again, he's a guy. He's going to get receptions for sure. Are those receptions going to get turned into yards? And what I want is kind of volume. And I don't know what his volume is. I can't say for certain what his volume is going to be right now, but I figure he's probably going to catch 4 to 6 passes a game, I would say, because if they trade Olave, who else are they going to pass it to? Juwan Johnson, Bub Means, Rashid Shaheed, right? So if Tyler Shook's going to be throwing the ball 25 to 30 times a game, 6 of those are probably going to have to go to Alvin Kamara, right? Then you come back and you say, okay, DK Metcalf. If DK Metcalf is with Aaron Rodgers is probably going to pepper him with targets. But again, if he likes Calvin Austin better, or if they bring in Lazard, he'll be like, who's DK Metcalf? And I don't really like where the value
of the friends of Rodgers thing really is going to screw the Steelers receiver.
I don't like where the value of DK is right there. If I'm just being brutally honest with you. I'm an MHJ. I like Marvin Harrison Jr. where his value is. Like I said to you last year, guys,
he was so roster right now.
He was so highly drafted that it was so hard to not start him in redraft. We went through this start sit decision, I think, 27 bajillion times last year, where we look at it. where we look at it and we say, is he worth starting? And he wasn't putting up the numbers to make it super relevant. But if you didn't start him, you felt like you were going to be missing out because you drafted him so high. Where he's being drafted right now, third, I've seen him as low as the 4th round. Absolutely.
And he's a prime
Marvin
sophomore
Harrison
jump
Jr.
guy.
And if you think about it,
sophomore jump guy.
if you think about it just in terms of like, okay, where could there be an increase? I mean, if they just give him a couple more design plays, if they give him more targets, it's not like they have a room that is amazing. It's Michael Wilson, Trey McBride, which is great, and Marv. You figure if Kyler decides that he's going to throw it better or they're going to queue up a couple more pass plays, 28 pass attempts, that could turn into a lot of targets for Marv. Marv just has to be open and ready to receive them. And I don't think that it's a bad call to go after Marv. Joe, I see that we've got Beck. Gino just went. We only have 2 quarterbacks here. If you're willing to just roll Penix and Murray, I am too.
I kind of think we should. My ideal looking at this upcoming turn, obviously, if Gesicki's still on the board, it's a home run. But if not, it's going to be Otten in the iOS.
All right. I hate Otten this year. Like, there goes Gesicki. That's a disappointment.
Well, here's your other tight ends on the board, Bob, that have any remote correlation to what we're doing here.
Kyle Pitts went in the 11th. Shocking.
Kyle Pitts got reached on. Ferguson from the Rams is still
out
there.
Ferguson. I could do Ferguson with Jonnu. Jonnu's pretty stable.
And Otten.
Jonnu's stable. Schultz, I'm okay with too. I wouldn't push for him in here.
Oh no, Schultz is probably gonna.
There goes Otten. That makes sense. I'm okay with that.
This pick here, based upon everything, is going to be the iOS.
Okay. Do you have Taj Brooks queued up for the ladder?
This is
also Joe.
One of the things, guys, and you guys know the narrative a lot from watching Local Football Flavor, is you have to be narrative driven and drive into your teams, because there's a lot of great talent here from just a big board perspective that you don't normally see us passing on. But because we're being committed to dominating 15, 16, and 17 through these stacks that we've built, it's a different way of looking at it. This is a very rifled approach to winning $2 million, which I think you need to do.
Can you also queue up Ollie Gordon? Don't take him yet, just queue him.
Oh, I'll queue him, baby.
All right, who you taking here?
That's the iOS.
Okay. Was that around ADP?
That was ADP.
Okay.
That exactly was ADP.
I hope you have Westbrook Akine queued up, Ollie Gordon queued up. I want that.
Oh, Bob, I got a sexy queue right now. The problem is my queue's bigger than it. We don't have enough tight ends on it.
Well, again,
we only have 5 picks left and 1 tight end on the roster.
All right, Ferguson should be the next one at this turn here. And then
I think the idea would be Ferguson here and then Ollie on the comeback.
Ollie and then Brooks.
Yeah. So here's how I'm seeing the last 5 picks, Bob. Ferguson, Schultz, Ollie, Westbrook, Brooks.
Okay. Be aware Westbrook might get taken a little bit earlier. But anyway.
Well, then what we got to do is cut out Schultz or Ferguson, and then we'll take a last round plunge.
Take Ferguson here.
All right.
Unless Akine, take Ferguson here. What positions do you guys have a bigger drop-off, running back or wide receiver? I feel like there's a lot more good running backs this year, which is why people might be drafting the stud wide receivers first. So, Jason, I feel like there is a definitive tiers for both, and there is a collection of players, a smattering of players that kind of runs through a continuum for me for so there's obviously a first tier of guys And that goes for wide receivers and running backs. Then there's a second tier, guys. And I think for wide receivers, my second tier is much wider than for running backs. And then as you go down, I think that like my third tier for wide receivers is also fairly large in comparison to where other people might have them. And running backs, I feel like production at running backs, because it's so highly attuned to volume, that and volume and like, fantasy production and expected fantasy points and stuff, we have to take a look at it and see, well, like, what are these running backs and their opportunities? And we'll take a look at that after we run through the rest of this draft, Jason. Stick around. We're going to go back up to the top and we'll just take a look at your question again and take a look at how this draft transformed. Because again, this is a PPR draft on DraftKings. Best ball, of course, but PPR. So keeping that in mind, you're getting more value out of wide receivers. And I just want you to see where the running backs are actually going, because the cliff for running backs is much more pronounced than the gradual decline in production that you could potentially get from wide receivers. So I would say that there is a bigger drop-off in running back and that there is a gradual decline for wide receivers. There are a lot of good running backs.
Just for example, just look at this round that just happened. In the 16th round, you see Calvin Austin, who's the number 2 for the Steelers, and Lockett, who's the number 2 for the Titans. Now, granted, high scoring offenses, no, but always on the field guys, yes. You're not getting that with running backs down here. Ollie Gordon at best is going to be the goal line back. So you're looking for injury help.
Joe,
injury
to
help.
The point that I made
Will
on
Shipley
Monday,
ain't seen the field as long as Saquon can breathe.
To the point that I made on Wednesday of last week, though, is that the value that you're getting out of running backs this late can be tremendous, because the pathway for a running back.
Oh, that's true.
They only need.
But it's also to my point of
one thing to happen.
You just said. It's so gradually winding down. You're getting people who are on the field without having to build an injury scenario in the 16th round.
Right.
You can't do it with running backs. And that's why you can tell definitively the wide receiver pool is so much deeper.
Right. And now when we go look at our team, this team is a little bit overinvested on Atlanta. However, when we look at the way it's built, this tracks with what we talked about earlier in the episode. Atlanta has games with Tampa, Arizona, and the Rams. We get a little bit of action in all those games. No huge mega stack outside of Arizona and Atlanta, and then we build in from there. So you're not just taking like a bunch of guys that are just guys that could perform well. You're taking guys that have correlations to the games that you think are going to be higher scoring, or you think that are going to be slightly more competitive.
And then obviously, because those games are in December, you're making assumptions, but Miami's probably going to need to score a lot of points if they don't think they're going to win. And that coach will be on the hot seat, if not fired, by December. They're going to be doing everything they can in Miami.
They're going to have to score, and having games against Cincy and Tampa it makes sense, right?
Especially against Cincy. They don't play defense.
So who's here? Who do we want to take
this
here?
This is going to be Akine.
Okay, Akine. And that will wind us down to 8 wide receivers?
Let me get you that number here. After we take Akine, we will be at 8. That's correct.
Okay.
Right now, we are at 2, 6, 8, and 2.
Okay, that's good.
So it'll be Brooks and then a whatever tight end is left in the last pick.
Okay. Tight ends that we could probably attack.
I mean, the tight end's just going to be best available. I mean, quite frankly.
Here's the thing, Joe.
Unless you want to go with Sanders, because we did have a little bit of a Carolina.
I'm willing to roll the dice on a guy like Gunnar Helm from Texas. New Orleans is a weak matchup. That could be a nice thing. You could revive your boy Ben Sinnott if you want to take a chance. Looking at other options.
Quite frankly, Bob, I'd rather take a chance on Noah Gray if he's still there in the last pick.
Knowing we have Carolina as a correlation, Jatavion Sanders could be open for us.
Well, then Sanders is probably the realistic answer then.
And then Tampa. I mean, you could go double Rams if Jonnu doesn't share the bye week, if you believe more in Higbee.
Nah, we already went with one Rams tight end. You don't ever double two tight ends with
The other thing too is that Cincinnati carries a couple tight ends on their roster that could be relevant. That could be
Yeah, they
something
don't
to
play
look
any of them.
into. Yeah, I
They only
see
play
that.
the second.
I'm just speaking out like the different things that you can attack. Oh, also, hey, no. You know what? We're taking my boy. Last round, Oronde Gadsden. We're taking the boy. He has the Chargers correlation to Houston. Tweener tight end. Could be
How do you
really
spell it?
relevant. I think it's like Oranda, Oronde. Also on that team now, Ty Conklin, Will Dissly.
Gadsden. I
None
spelled
of
it
those
Gad.
tight ends have been taken. And
I'll give you Gadsden. We'll do Brooks and Gadsden, end this thing out.
I like it. Get a little bit of deep sleeper action in the
That's
last
19 and 24.
And again, there is a real pathway that neither of those players score any points for us this year at all.
And there's also a pathway where Brooks is a league winner.
In the off chance that they do, it will most likely happen at the back end of the season, week 15, week 16, week 17. Knowing that we have a pretty solid roster already, we didn't need to push Freiermuth. We didn't need to push Strange or Okonkwo.
No doubt the weak spot of this team is tight end.
And that's fine. If you're going to be weak in a position, tight end is the best position to be weak in.
Now, we got a lot of faith in Penix in this roster.
It's okay though. Like, again, going back to the theory of if you build a team, you want to believe that the players on that team are going to be relevant. Penix is going to be relevant if the pass catchers are relevant.
That's true.
So by taking Drake London in the second round, we are predicating that, yes. Now, it doesn't mean that Penix is going to be amazing by any means. Penix can troll up and get 18 points a week, and Drake London can still be a 30-point scorer. Don't get me wrong. That could absolutely happen. But the likelihood is that it's going to be better. And Kyler and Penix is a scary quarterback conversation to have because Murray kind of checks out at some points in time. But going into this, knowing that those matchups in week 15, 16, and 17 are good, potentially very competitive matchups, Murray's going to have to play ball. Michael Penix is going to have to play ball. The relevancy is there. I think that building teams using this strategy, it allows you to go into it and figuring out the mindset and be like, okay, I drafted pick 8. Obviously, I'm not going to have a chance at Saquon Barkley, but do I like that Philadelphia Buffalo matchup? Okay, let me build out AJ Brown. Let me build out, Terry McLaurin for week 16. Hey, by the way, Washington plays Dallas. Do I want to take, Ferguson and Pickens a little bit later? Sure. Why not? If you believe, sure. You know what I'm saying? And this plays into what we talked about last week. Quincy, what's going on, man? What plays into what we talked about last week is that looking at the narratives of the situation and asking ourselves, okay, what could potentially play out? We are going to go back up to the top after this draft really quickly. Who would you pick first, Quincy asks, out of these rookie running backs? Harvey, Henderson, Omarion, Hampton. So I just went on record saying Harvey isn't my best option, depending on the situation. If this is redraft,
Quincy, is this a redraft or a dynasty? Because that will change my answer.
If it's dynasty, I'm on Omarion Hampton. If it's dynasty, I'm on Omarion Hampton.
I'm on Henderson.
I'm on Omarion Hampton for dynasty for a couple of reasons. Reason number one is the Chargers have proven to run the ball. They're in a good situation. Yeah. If the coaching staff stays in place, I think Omarion Hampton could be a stellar option. But knowing this is redraft, and I'm assuming PPR redraft, I'm actually on Trevion Henderson here. Thinking it through.
Oh, see, I'm on Harvey, and then my number 2 answer isn't even listed in the one Caleb Johnson.
And that's fine.
I would rank the rookies there.
Out of these guys,
just the H's on a redraft, I'm Harvey, Quincy.
Yeah, and I'm not. So like I said, Quincy, earlier about Harvey, I'm probably one of the people that you're going to see on, on YouTube, on podcasts or whatever, that aren't going to be high on RJ Harvey. And I'm fine with that. If I lose
Situation's
out,
too good, Bob.
if I lose out on Harvey, I'm fine with that. I understand the situation's too good, but how many times have we said this about running backs that have gone to Denver? Okay. How many times have we said this about running backs going to Denver? The situation's too good. The situation's too good. They got to use them. It's going to be successful. And they weren't. Okay. I get that every situation is different, but I'm not willing to push a guy and force a guy onto my team that, from all intents and purposes, only maybe a couple content creators and analysts were talking about pre-draft. He was going 13th, 14th round. And now all of a sudden, because he goes to Denver where he went there, because Denver's running room has sucked all last year, doesn't mean, even if it's a good situation, it doesn't mean that he is going to have a successful fantasy football season. I have told you many times, Joe, that when you look at the way that Denver is set up, that even last year, even if they would have had a running back, there's a good chance that they wouldn't have given him the ball when they were in scoring positions in the red zone. And they're
I don't think that Bo's running in as many this year.
They went out and they bought Evan Ingram. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't buy a asset like that with the money they spent on Ingram. You don't go out and buy an asset like that who is relevant in the red zone to a really high degree. And
I
then
just
say,
see Harvey being his
RJ
Kamara.
Harvey has 7. I think the ceiling for Harvey, I'm saying Harvey's going to have a decent fantasy season, but I don't think that Harvey is going to be a league winner. I think that Harvey's probably going to kind of get you into that probably 900 to 1,100 yard rushing mark, maybe 6 to 7 touchdowns, and maybe 25 catches. I'm not, maybe 40 catches. If between 25 and 40, I think I can vacillate on that a lot. I'm just not in on that. Now, Henderson, on the other hand, I think is really interesting. So Quincy, I think Henderson is really interesting, particularly when you see we're taking Stevenson a lot because his value is really low on DraftKings. He's like 13th round, 12th round.
Well, I don't think he's going away.
Why not? He isn't going away, but also like Drake May made some bad throws last year that led to a lot of turnovers. And Trevion Henderson is a good pass catching back. Now, do I think that Trevion Henderson is going to have like a ridiculous amount of yards on the ground? Probably not. But I do like his capacity for scoring a little bit more, because when I look at the situation for New England, they have a lot of pass catchers, but even those pass catchers aren't even relevant in the red zone. Okay. Because they didn't really get there a lot, but I don't see the relevancy for them a lot other than maybe Hunter Henry in the red zone. So when you look at it and you say, okay, well, what's the option? Well, Stevenson or Trevion Henderson. Okay. Stevenson's probably going to be the pounder, but Trevion's probably going to have a little bit more opportunities there. And then Omarion is probably going to get a lot more usage towards the back end of the season, but Najee is still a threat. He's still an incredible threat. It was a bad situation he walked into from a fantasy perspective, but from a career perspective,
it's great. Yeah.
Omarion's in a great place. So I see all the stuff for Harvey. I get it. Like, I'm not saying that I don't get RJ Harvey. I just don't understand why. And I get people can come out of the woodwork, but again, like, I'm looking at like kind of the meat and potatoes of the season when you gotta, like, when you're trying to get into your own fantasy playoffs. And I'm seeing Denver, the matchups are pretty decent, but you got Denver against week 7 against the Giants, Dallas, Houston, Vegas, Kansas City, and then a bye week 12. I don't want my bye week 12 if I'm fighting for a playoffs and I drafted RJ Harvey in the top 5.
See, I don't worry about that.
Like, especially if I went no running back. That's the other thing. RJ Harvey precludes you. If you're thinking about RJ Harvey, you are going close to 0 running backs as possible. and he's going to be your first running back off the board. This is the thing, Joe. Most people don't think like you. Most people aren't building RJ Harvey as their second or third back. Most people are going to be building RJ Harvey as their first. And that's why I'm not on RJ Harvey, because nobody's building Trevion Henderson as their first running back.
Guys, it's got to be a running back core. It's Thunder Light.
People that are building RJ Harvey as their first or second running back. And I just don't, I'm not in on it. Like the Omarion Hampton as your first running back.
So Jason here, let me hit you with this. I'm 100% with you with the Bengals. We need piece of the Bengals loves in our lives. So one of the big ways that we do our player rankings here at Local Football Flavor is through the gamblers. Long story short, the most accurate projections of any site are the actual live sports bet markets. It's the way it is. There's no clickbait. It's just yes or no, what's going to be right. And as a result, when a team drastically underperforms or overperforms, our rankings are inaccurate as a result. Last year, the Bengals, more than any other team in the NFL, outscored their projections. So yeah, we were under on what we should have been on the Bengals. Conversely, Jacksonville was the most overrated team based upon what they did. So I'm with you. The markets have already adjusted, and I'm seeing just from the community people saying that they're over adjusting on the Bengals. I think they got it back to right. The Bengals going to score a whole lot of points, and they're basically building their team and telling you that. They're built their team like a Big 12 program. No defense whatsoever, and just hope they can outscore you. So, Jason, Joe, I'm with you. Give me the Bungles.
So, Joe, based off of Jason's question here, when we come back up to this top half, you can kind of see what I was talking about, okay? Is that there are definitive tiers that people are believing in for running backs.
Well, here, let me show you the tier for running backs, because
there is a drop off. Okay, so
after Johnson, there's nothing.
So go back up. When we look at the running backs, go back up, Joe, to the top. Is that many people will have this tier. I can't see the top, Joe. There you go. The tier is Bijan, Saquon, Gibbs. That's tier 1, elite, no questions asked. And most people will have Chase and Jefferson in their own tier by themselves ahead of CeeDee Lamb. And so CeeDee Lamb would start most people's tier 2. Now, for me, I don't feel like there is a precipitated huge cliff between any of these wide receivers. So if you look at these wide receivers, you are gradually going down. And and probably at the point that you get to J-Mo or DK, you're probably like, okay, I have some questions. But for the most part, if you get 2 or 3 out of those guys, you will most likely have 2 top 24 finishers. Okay. If you hammer in and you take 2 out of 3 of your first couple of picks are wide receivers, you're going to get most likely 2 out of the top 24 guys, because they're the number 1 wide receivers on their team. There's a good amount of volume for these players, and it's even not predicting injuries, right? It might feel unusual that Devontae Adams in number 2 is going up there close to Puka, but again, Stafford really only throws the ball to a couple of people. So it makes sense. Then where you start getting down to Sutton and Williams, you start to be like, okay, well, now I have some questions. Everybody up there, it's just like, well, who do I like? Now, you can't get me to take Terry McLaurin unless I stack Jaden Daniels. I don't know why they put Lamar there, but whatever. But again, that's kind of the viewpoint that I have there. But there is a cliff with running back, and you can see it by the long runs of wide receivers versus the pockets of running backs that you're seeing, right? So Ashton Genty, as you said here, Jason, going 7th, he goes anywhere from pick 7 to pick 19. Okay. So people question him a lot. People are questioning McCaffrey a lot. He can go as high as 7 and as low as 16, I've seen. And then you have that pocket.
Well, that guy wanted to force the Vegas stack. I mean, I don't know if that's exactly the best. I mean, he was forcing the Vegas stack.
That's fine. But look at it. You see that pocket of players. So it's Gibbs, Bijan, Barkley, all on their own. And then you have Genty, McCaffrey, Henry, and Achane. That's another tier. And then your next tier, because JT usually, he's a slider as well, is JT, Jacobs, and Bucky. And then stop. And then stop. That's kind of what people are thinking about for the first 2 rounds. Then now you start introducing questions. Nobody really has questions outside of injury questions for the above guys that I said. Mm-hmm. And that's a fact. People might try to argue, if you own Rachaad White in a dynasty, you might try to argue against Bucky. If you own him, you might say, well, Liam Cohen's gone. I see regression. People are trying to find reasons to not want to take Bucky in the 2nd round so that he starts dropping in the 3rd round, because it's much nicer to have Bucky in the 3rd than Bucky in the 2nd. You feel better about yourself. But when you look at the rest of the board, how many years now have people been trying to say the downfall of Kyren Williams? Okay. Again, Chase Brown. Then you have the question mark of Breece, Mixon, Cook, and Hampton. So that tier of players, if everything works in their favor, they're going to get high volume and you're going to get value. If it doesn't, then most people are going to say, well, man, I think Cook's going to regress, so I'd rather take Ted. Or I think Chase Brown isn't going to get the right looks. I'd rather take Devonta Smith or Rashee Rice. Is a little bit more comfortable. Same thing with Breece. Nothing. I mean, yeah, he looks a little bit less explosive, but again, a year off that injury, he could be better. And then I'm going to move this off the screen, Jason, so you can see this next tier. Is there a verifiable difference for you between Joe Mixon and James Conner? And even yet, is there a super verifiable difference for you between James Cook and David Montgomery? So you see what I'm saying is that there's a gradual tier down with these wide receivers, but there are pockets of running backs. And here's why I say this is that most people are going to want 2 running backs before you get to Aaron Jones. Because once you get to Aaron Jones, and Aaron Jones, quite frankly, was taken a little bit higher in this draft than he normally is. But once you get to a guy like Aaron Jones, then and you can scroll down a little bit more, Joe.
Yeah, Aaron Jones is like a little. Normally it's Caleb Johnson, and in this case, it was all Judkins slipped.
Stop there
because of that. But
so you look at
general,
it.
Once you get past Caleb Johnson, you're on a cliff. You don't want Pollard. You don't want Pacheco. You don't want Scatterbo. These guys cannot be your starter.
I'm okay with Pollard. You know that. I'm okay with Pollard. But now here's the interesting thing, Jason, and everybody who's watching. Now that those pockets dissipate, you're going to see the deadest of dead zones for running backs. So, Joe, let's go to the 7th round. So scroll down so that the top round is the 7th round. Okay. Now let's look at the board. The board starts to light up with red and blue.
This is you either love a guy or you pass on him. That's what the entire beyond the 7th round is.
Now, what you see here in the 7th through the 12th round, you see running backs that are the dead zone running backs that a lot of people in best ball are going to take chances on because one of them should hit. One of them, maybe 2 of them should hit.
Portfolio.
But I want to say again that I do usually want to come out of the first 6 rounds with 2 running backs. Usually,
you have to.
However, I will pivot if necessary. And sometimes I'm coming out of drafts where my second running back is Isaiah Pacheco, and I feel a little bit vulnerable. And then I start to hammer running backs in this round a little bit more. And then you're taking more dead zone running backs. And you're like, oh,
that's how you lose the draft. I mean, that's if you're forcing yourself to be shopping in dead zones, that's how you lose the draft. Because you have no trade capital.
And that's not to say that like a guy like Jordan Mason can't be successful or a guy like Tracy or Warren. These guys down here, these running backs could potentially win you a league. Absolutely could. But Yeah, just like this, Jason, is that Pittman down and Ayuk are just as they're people would consider them dead zone wide receivers because you look at this and you say, oh my God, like look at all the quarterbacks getting taken. And again, this is going to change with redraft because redraft pushes quarterbacks a little bit further down the board than most because you only need one in a redraft most times. And in best ball, you're taking more than one. So quarterbacks start to climb out the board. So what you're going to see, and that's going to be the scary part, is when you get to redraft season, because quarterbacks are going to be pushed down more, a lot of these running backs are going to be pushed up higher. So there's going to be Spears is probably going to go closer to Jadon Blue and closer to Tootin. You're going to see Jack Beck probably go a little bit closer to Mooney than he would here. You're only getting that drop to Jack Beck because look at all those tight ends. I mean, just look at, this is people are like, oh, I don't have a tight end yet. Oh shit, I got to take a tight end.
And that's what happens.
You don't need to do that. If Family were in the chat right now, he would tell you it is okay to go and travel the dead zone of tight ends because, as we've established on our show multiple times, you only need to score approximately 10 to 12 points in a PPR league to be a top tight end. And you aren't going to lose out. Like, we don't have the Travis Kelce years anymore, right? And people are like, well, Brock Bowers, this, Trey McBride, that. Yes. If you want to sacrifice, go up, Joe. If you want to sacrifice one of those wide receivers or running backs for Trey McBride or Brock Bowers, I've done it. I've done it a bunch of times, and you can build some incredibly different teams that are still.
Well, the guy who did it in the one hole did it wrong, but
that are still really relevant to scoring a lot of points. I'm just going to read you a team that I drafted, Joe. This is one I didn't send you yesterday. I drafted this one yesterday in the just in a $3 league. Again, not a huge money league, but this was the team I came out with. Okay. It was a 2-7-8-3. I usually don't like to take 7 running backs, but this was the team and it was on DraftKings. Hurts, Bijan, Caleb Johnson, Devonta Waddle, McBride, Pearsall, Higgins, Kincaid, Stevenson, Tua, Trey, Benson, Sampson, Tillman, Roschon, Westbrook Akine, Roman Wilson, Fannin, and Ollie Gordon.
Stacked team right there.
I am not upset by that at all. It gives me some relevant correlations that we talked about this episode. I'm not struggling at the quarterback position. I'm very comfortable with Hurts and Tua. And then I've got running backs that have, like I said, like Roschon, Dylan Sampson, and Ollie Gordon all have correlations. It went a little bit Browns heavy at the end. But again, you look at it and you say, do I need 2 running backs out of the first couple of rounds? I don't. But if I don't take them, I have to ask myself, where is the pathway for anybody below that to be a top 24 running back? And if a top 24 running back, what's the point? What are the points that they're scoring in a given week? Because a number 1 running back should be getting plus 20, right? Mm-hmm. You're looking at plus 20 points. Anybody as a running back 2, you're probably looking in that 15 plus category. And anybody else is probably going to be sticking around sub 15. So what guys have the potential to pop over 15? So go down, Joe, to the dead zone and below, particularly below the dead zone. I'd like you to go below the dead zone. Yeah, right here is good. So we look at guys. Stevenson could do it. Javonte, maybe. I don't like him, but he could. Where we at? Ray Davis could. Bigsby, probably not. Jalen Wright, if he is what I think Ollie Gordon could be, probably. Eckler and Hill, if they move off Ryan Robinson. It's dicey down here, guys. Like you're putting your shots in different categories here. But once you get to the 13th round, I think 13th round and below, the wide receivers and the running backs are basically kind of the same in terms of what the volume, like the potential volume. Like, I don't think Tyler Lockett's going to have an extreme amount of volume. or that Kelvin Austin is going to have a extreme amount of volume. But the pathway for Austin to be relevant is much harder, I think, potentially, than the pathway for Ray Davis to be relevant. Relevancy for Michael Wilson probably won't happen this year, guys. We don't want to keep making Michael Wilson a thing. It's probably not going to happen. See, when you build these teams out, taking those 4 wide receivers there, like that guy did at pick 7, Pierce, Tillman, Keenan Allen, Michael Wilson, 2 out of those 4 guys are probably going to be relevant in a couple of games during the year. And there's nothing wrong with that, particularly in best ball. Would you rather have those guys, or would you rather have White, Noel, Shipley, and Royals? And quite frankly, I think both sides are fairly similar, but I definitely don't want to be rolling out Rachaad White as my 3rd running back, is what I'm saying.
It's also the argument why you shouldn't start off with 6 receivers.
Yeah, I don't want to be rolling out Rachaad White as my 3rd running back, but I'm okay if Alec Pierce is my 4th wide receiver. Or 5th wide receiver. I'm not going to be too beat up about it, because I know he has a better chance some weeks of scoring 20 points. All he needs is that 100-point bonus. Now, in half PPR, this shifts just a little bit, just slightly. But again, the pathway to relevancy for these running backs needs an injury for the most part, unless they're in a known split backfield. Like I said earlier to Joe, Braylon Allen, out of all these guys outside of Stevenson, Braylon Allen could be very relevant to start the season. And and Davis as well, if they decide to push their way off of Hall. So again, the narrative structure is that if you don't believe in Breece Hall, then you should believe in Braylon Allen and Davis and take one of them. If you don't believe in, let me see another guy here, Joe. If you don't believe in DeAndre Swift, take a chance on Monangai. Take a chance on Roschon Johnson. If you don't believe Christian McCaffrey is going to be healthy, take Garendo.
That's
like
right.
there are.
This is why narratives are so important. And you want to have, because what you don't want to have at the end of a draft is no possibility for your team to win. This is why Bob and I focus on the situations. Bob just outlined a bunch of them there, because you're not going to have a contradictory situation in
Jason.
real life where it just doesn't work like that. But a scenario that could happen, it's plausible, does. That's why we're going to return to you guys on Wednesday with another one of the scenarios. Unless you guys give us one in the chat, we're going to do that Cincinnati doesn't know how to spell defense, and every single one of their games are a shootout. Kind of had a little bit of that correlation here, but that's what it's going to be, guys. So we love you all for
being especially nice if we had the number 1 pick to do that. Be especially
we would
nice.
Pretty much need the number 1 pick to do that. But we'll see you guys. It'll be a great one, and we'll make it from there, even if we don't have the number 1 pick.
Wednesday at 3:45 Eastern.